Hi, everybody. That was a great way to start off the day with Christina and her dog and the multiple visitors to her home. I'm very excited to be hosting the panel today with Patty Brown and Angela Matusik, who are both awesome content leaders that leverage content in a multitude of ways. And I think we'll be able to provide some great knowledge and insights around kind of content hub trends, what's been working, what's changing, where are we going in the future. And so I want to kick it off, quick intros. Like I said, I'm Andrew. I'm the Chief Client Officer here at Knotch. Patty, if you could just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about DXC as well as how you view content internally.
Sure. Hi, I'm Patty Brown, and I lead the Content Hub, something that we call within marketing communications at DXC. So we're a center of excellence that sits within the marketing and communication and really work with all of marketing, from the portfolio marketing team, to the regional teams, to the partners, creating our content and developing content, both written, video, multimedia for the different teams. I have around 20 people on my team, and we're really focused again on developing consistent content that is used throughout the organization.
Fantastic. Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Angela, who I always like to say is like 2 miles away from me right now. Ran into her restaurant briefly the other day. She forgot my name because I haven't seen her in a long time. But
and we were wearing masks.
Yes. And we were wearing masks, which throws a wrench into things for sure. Introduce yourself and the work that you do at HP, please.
Thank you. I'm still mortified that I didn't know your name instantaneously, especially since all we've been through together in these wonderful Knotch seminars. But my name's Angela Matusik, and I work at HP, and it's great to hear so many connections with Patty. And earlier, I heard mention somebody else who worked at HPE was asking a question. So I think there's a lot of my peers in here, and I think that's great. I am the head of corporate brand, content, and creative. So I oversee our brand identity. And then I also focus on creating stories about our brand purpose and mission and inspirational stories around technology. And, really looking to see what can we contribute to conversations. I think so much of what I heard Christina saying was so relevant to what we do, but we publish articles, we make short films, and we're really looking to connect with audiences in a whole new way through storytelling.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is obviously both of you guys are from technology brands. Christina's from a technology brand. And I would say some of the best storytelling that I've seen recently has been coming out of technology brands, which isn't necessarily something like a connection what people would make, but it really comes down to technologies about empowering people to do things. And I think that becomes a very ripe way of writing about how your business is impacting lives. Patty, talk a little bit about your team as far as that idea of like storytelling at kind of like the more macro kind of brand level. And what are some of the stories that you're telling? What are some of the things that you're focused on?
Yeah, so we, I think as we've talked about and the keynote spoke about, the importance of humanizing the brand, right? And I think that is true for all industries, as well as, technology. So we have a program I'll talk to you a little bit about, which is called our Experts Program. And this is an area where we've identified around 40 experts throughout the company that represent different regions, industries, areas of expertise. And we're really doing our best to showcase their thought leadership and their thinking, again, all around humanizing the brand, right? So we have set up different microsites for each of these executives, and where we feature byline content, talk about everything, their social channels, and really have a center spot, have a home for all of this information that then we use in campaigns on the website. And again, so that we're able to drive people, help humanize the brand, show the power of our SMEs, our subject matter experts thinking around multiple areas. So it's a program that's worked very well, and I think it really does serve the company well.
And Angela, I know the garage has been around for a little while now. Talk a little bit through the storytelling that you're doing there, again,
Sure.
humanizing of a technology company.
Absolutely. I love that phrase. I would say that all of our stories begin with a person, and we are not very HP centric in the storytelling that we do on The Garage. We're more interested in looking at the world around us, and we sort of think about the areas where HP plays a role or is causing change, or perhaps advancing something a little bit further. So there's lots of areas that we can play in, even if it's not like our core business. So there might be healthcare or education, or the creative arts. There are so many things that our technology touches, and there are amazing, interesting stories to be told about how that's happening, but also like, how does it affect our everyday life? So we love to write about the way our lives are evolving and changing, especially during these tumultuous times. And technology does play a role in it, but we also like to look at it from a bigger picture point of view. So humanizing is also, I think, humanizing the reader in a way, because we like to think, when we create our content, you have to know why it's relevant. Like, why is this worth somebody's time to read? And you can't just push out a business message or corporate message. Someone that you think is really interesting or important might not be somebody that people want to hear from. It's so you have to think about, how does your content relate to people's everyday lives, and what are you saying to them? What's worthwhile? We did we have so many interesting stories in the works, but I just want to say we just released a documentary a week ago that I'm really proud of, called Dear Future Me. It's a small short film that we actually made here in our town, Andrew, Maplewood, New Jersey. It came about as a very like localized story. It's about middle school students writing letters to their future selves. And as soon as I heard it, it felt like an HP story to me, even though I know that for a lot of people, they might go like, I don't understand. Like, what does writing letters to the future have to do with HP? And it has to do with a lot of things. Like, you watch these films and it's about reinvention, which is like our core philosophy of our company, to keep reinventing. It's about having hope and optimism to the future. It's this idea of like not being afraid to change, which is so crucial to a survival of a company. And, yes, you can need a printer to write a letter, or you might need a computer to do your classes these days, but that's all secondary to the emotion that we were pushing through in the films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really good work. For anyone who's listening, go check it out on The Garage. It's great. I think that the other thing that's really awesome about both of your organizations is that you call your content hub something other than a blog. I find
I'm so over that word.
I know. I posted this on LinkedIn last week, and it just occurred to me, and I'm like, I feel like blog is due for a refresh. And someone mentioned like, yeah, it's kind of like the equivalent of like Tom from MySpace. And it's this idea that, a blog may have been where content started, a decade ago for some brands. But it's evolved into being a much more powerful part of the business and the marketing strategy. I'd love to hear how you guys think about content now that we kind of know about the storytelling side. Like, what are the business goals that you're trying to achieve? What are the outcomes that you're looking for? What are the things that you want to be able to go back to the rest of the marketing organization and saying, this is what content is doing for us from a business perspective? Patty, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, when we look at the sales funnel or the content funnel, I think it's important that we are integrating all of the different layers of the funnel. Mm-hmm. And when you look at, what you were just talking about, a blog, you look at that as just a one-off piece or a white paper. And when people think, oh, what layer of the funnel? But it is critical, in my opinion, that all layers are integrated, right? So you go from the awareness activities, such as social media, public relations, updating of your website. And how does that then connect with the engagement activities, with white papers, podcasts, webinars mm-hmm. that can help generate leads, and all the way down to the enablement activities like PowerPoints and fact sheets and data sheets. So it's important when you're, starting any kind of content project that, again, you're looking at all the facets, all the layers, and how they will connect. For me, that is the business imperative to all this content that we're creating. I mean, we see so much now, right? So the question is, what is the business outcome? What is the business reason for existing? And so what we try and do on the Content Hub is really make the connections between all the layers before we start, so that we're certain that, we're driving, it's a purposeful content.
Mm-hmm. And what are the different KPIs that you use to measure success by? And is it different for different phases of that content funnel or of that content journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another area where we have to be careful not to put in the silos, right? Mm-hmm. It is very difficult, definitely, to find common KPIs that tie the entire portfolio of content together from a performance standpoint. But ultimately, I think that the common ground can be how we can connect the dots from business development to sales. I mean, that to me really is one of the purposes of all this wonderful content we're creating. Mm-hmm. So how can we begin moving that down the funnel? How do we know what metrics contribute and can take a prospect through that sales funnel? For example, we want to understand the relationship between awareness improvements, such as earned media, such as the earned media value of press activities with the number of visitors and time spent on the website. So we're looking at that quite a bit. And then it's how do we go from here to figure out what translates into actual engagement, activities such as asset downloads, and trying to understand whether those leads are being converted to with sales. And the last bit is really the most difficult, which is that handshake between marketing and sales. How do we get that final? So when you look at KPIs, again, I think it's part of the continuum. It's not, how many visitors am I getting? I think it's all part of the process and part of that life cycle. So that's, we try and look at things that way.
Yeah. How about you, Angela?
Well, I think our approach is a little different in that I sit in the corporate communications team, not the marketing team. And that in some ways that is amazingly liberating, because I don't have to make direct KPI connections to our stories and sales. But what I do see our stories doing, in addition to raising awareness, attracting new readers, creating engagement, all of these things that we're able to prove through metrics, we also think of our stories as tools. It's like, in some ways, what we are creating through what we call our owned content at HP is has many different uses and a long life. So the first and foremost is that we're creating this content for our audience, that we're pushing it out through the garage or various platforms. But the second is, how do these stories become tools for our executives? How do they become tools for our salespeople, especially now when people can't have live interactions and we're not having events? We're able to take our stories and the different assets and components and repackage them and deliver them with a bow on to people around the company who need them, to help them knock on doors, remind people of certain things, to bring up new developments. So it's a great calling card and a way to sort of help all of HP become storytellers themselves. Like, we allow that through our storytelling to empower everybody. And I think that what we've really focused on this year is making our content have these long lives. So sometimes we will think about how we franchise something that is on a digital article. Then we have a print publication that we also create. We might take a video and turn it into an article to be in a print publication. And so you'll see like the synergy that's happening around our storytelling and making sure that the most important stories are being highlighted. Like, around when we first had the pandemic lockdown, HP was doing all this amazing work with 3D technology, printing, protection devices all around the world. And we were really able to step in and help and work with our colleagues and partners to bring these stories to life at a time when it was kind of hard to do that, even just to make sure we got all of the information and the photographs and the videos and the things that you need to bring the story to life. So that's something that I think we're very good at.
Yeah, I think, that's a really good point. I'll mention, especially with the pandemic. The first week, we got so many letters of appreciation from several customers. And what we did is went back, got the stories, documented the stories, and created a whole portal around that. And I think it's that's a good point, very useful in how we're telling what's happening in the outside world, how we're creating stories around that and our impact on, what's happening in the larger world. So that's, and the other point that you brought up, I think was very good, is, creating that central piece of content. And from there, sending out several, creating videos or smaller articles, again, around one body of work. For example, on an annual basis, we do a very big CXO survey. And from that, as you mentioned, we create many pieces, wrap it up in a bow for several of our constituents internally, internal comms, PR, salespeople. And I think that's really important as well. And one of the functions of a good content group.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think over the last, few months through COVID and whatnot and every other crisis that's been going on, I think that the value of the content team has definitely kind of the stock has risen internally as far as we need these teams in order to get this messaging out, to maintain relevance, to tell our customer stories, so on and so forth. And having a team structure in place is really important. That helps facilitate that. And I think one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, hey, you work with a lot of content people, like what is their team structured like what works for them? Because there hasn't really been the playbook that is a repeatable playbook that you might have in some other parts of digital marketing that have kind of been more solidified. I'm curious, Angela, like on your side, from more of the kind of the corporate comm side, like what does your team look like, and what are the skill sets of your team members?
Sure. We have a pretty small team internally. There's only 9 of us, and I would say that we are editors, we are visual people like designers, photo editors, content producers. Everybody wears lots of hats, and then also project managers. And we have one person who does an amazing job as a staff corporate brand voice writer. But they are not our only team, and we rely on our partners. We work with T Brand Studios from the New York Times is our partner that we have for the garage, and we've been working with them for a couple of years now. And what's so wonderful about that is that we've worked out all the kinks, we've really figured out our system, and they are a part of our team. And we have weekly editorial meetings with them. They're just like an extension of our newsroom. But they really help us pull in the talent that we need to create the quality of the stories that we're demanding. So, and I think the other thing that we do is we do have a network of freelancers, and this is something I've had to really advocate for within a corporation, because I'm sure some of you on this call listening, it's not always easy to hire individuals for projects within a corporation. But we've figured out ways that we can successfully do this that allows us to hire individuals that bring unique skill sets, and that could be illustrators and photographers and writers and journalists. And we are really looking, there was something that Christina said about that, we're looking for our content to drive change and create opportunity. So we're all thinking about diversity, overdue thing that we're talking about within our walls. I'm sure everybody here is too. And I really think that as the role of storytellers within a brand is to create that opportunity for diverse creators to have a sit at the table and to be able to see their work come to life. So it's both the content and the behind the scenes content. And I would say that whoever you're working with, if it's an agency or freelancers, that's something that is within our power to control. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. How about you, Patty? What's the DXC content team structure like?
So on the team, it's same thing. We've got a number of writers, editors. I have several content managers and strategists that actually get into the CMS, the content management system, whether that's our proprietary system or Workfront or Adobe, and they're actually creating pieces there, helping to determine the external website look and feel. But I'll tell you a couple things. So my background is I was a journalist for 20 years.
So is Angela.
There you go. Yes, excellent.
Yeah, we make the best employees.
Well, that's right. So a technology and business journalist working at, Information Week, did McGraw-Hill, and I've hired a few of my former colleagues, and I think that's a really good background for what we're doing. Very good storytellers, know what a deadline means, know how to meet a tight deadline, and just really knowing what resonates with the audience. I mean, I think a lot of times, people, when they're creating content, will forget what I think is the most important aspect of any content creation process, which is the audience, right? And who are we writing for? And as a journalist, it's just built inside, you grow up knowing that.
Yeah.
So, and just like my fellow colleague here, Angela, I also have a bench of writers and editors, of people that I've worked with over the many, many years that know technology, know business, know how to write, how to package a story.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So we're getting up on time here, and I wanted to just ask kind of one more question of both of you. As you look at the next 6 to 12 months, what are some of the trends that you maybe saw evolve a little bit throughout the last 4 to 5 months of the pandemic that you think are really going to take off and that you want to capitalize on over the next couple quarters? Angela, why don't you go?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can think of a couple of things, but one thing I'll just share with you. Our most successful stories that we've done in the past few months have been stories that are sort of lighthearted, to be honest with you, and more fun. We did a story in March that was like about how to unplug at the end of the day and have fun with your family. And then we did another story in the summer about sort of vacationing in your backyard. Again, like you're like, what does this have to do with HP? But we want you to fire up your printers first before you do that. But they do really well, these stories, and I think part of it just speaks to the world that we're living in today. And I think that it's insightful to know that sometimes you have to have a little bit of humor and lightheartedness and fun, and if you can sort of provide good advice, like actionable things that you could go and do and see and try out, it's really wonderful.
Yep.
I would say that, and to stay nimble, because I think no matter what you plan for, it's not going to be what you thought it was. So,
how about you, Patty? What trends do you see taking off in the next few months?
No, I completely agree with Angela on the story types. We've seen some very good success with, pieces that are not straight technology, but more about the integration of how to use it in these times, or
the utility aspect of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The other thing is, on a more practical note, I mean, we have so many people now working from home, sharing bandwidth between, working spouses, children. And so I think we're going to see a change from these large videos that may be crossing the streams. And I think maybe it's simpler and really focus more on quality versus quantity. I think at this point, less is more, really focusing those stories to not only show, the technology at its heart, what we're selling, but also humanizing that brand, humanizing the technology, and how it's used in our everyday lives. So that's a few of the things.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to you both. I know there were some questions that came in on the chat that we didn't get a chance to get to. So I'm sure you wouldn't mind if people connected with you on LinkedIn and
Sure,
got the direct from the source. But Patty and Angela, thanks so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right, thanks, guys.
Bye.